Thursday Night Football chaos. Here I am trying to go to bed early, and suddenly Joe Flacco says, not you, fat Jesus. You don't get any sleep, because the Cincinnati Bengals drove down the field to get the 33-31 win. They came all the way down to a wild Hail Mary attempt by the Steelers on the very last play of the game. Caroline, this was as back and forth a game as I can remember. And we said yesterday, if Aaron Rodgers, at what point would Aaron Rodgers become the story of the season? So today, the question I think should be, at what point do we start to look at Joe Flacco and say, buddy?
Right now. Like, this is that point. This is the point that we do that we give Joe Flacco his flowers. Because the Icy Hot Bowl, the Unk Bowl, the Men Over 40 Bowl, like whatever you want to call it, was more entertaining than the Super Bowl. Like, that was one of the most fun games, if not, Fitz, I'm willing to say right now, that was the most entertaining game that I have watched so far this season. This game was so fun. It was back and forth. And Joe Flacco, look, I think the Bengals realize, look, it's not rocket science that we can bring anybody who is a competent quarterback in here and tell them, hey, there are two things that you need to know. Chase number 1, Higgins number 5. Take the ball and give it to them, and we'll probably have a good bit of success. And that's exactly what we saw yesterday. Jamar Chase had 23 targets yesterday. 23 targets. That has to be more than Davante Smith and A.J. Brown have combined for the season at this point. And then you add in the 10 targets for T. Higgins. Those two together, 33 targets. They each had 22 catches combined for almost 300 yards yesterday. It is not rocket science. And I think the Bengals have proven that is why you pay top dollar for those two receivers. That maybe teams around the league would say, we'll pay one top dollar receiver and then figure it out from there. The Bengals are showing you why they invested in those two. I think we're also seeing Mike Tomlin was right. Like, Mike Tomlin was right for essentially calling Andrew Berry, the general manager of the Cleveland Browns, a doofus. And it is so Browns, is it not? It is so Cleveland Browns that we are waking up on Friday morning after Thursday Night Football in a game that the Browns didn't even play in, and we're calling the Cleveland Browns stupid for doing that, for trading away Joe Flacco. Because, of course, Mike Tomlin kind of called out Andrew Berry at the podium and said, I don't know why you trade a quarterback to a divisional opponent, a divisional rival who is hurting mightily in the quarterback department. We're seeing that Mike Tomlin's concern was right, that Joe Flacco was slinging it last night. 31 of 47, 342 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. He was incredibly clutch. He went toe-to-toe with Aaron Rodgers in a shootout last night. It was an absolute blast. Mike Tomlin was right, people. We should have been listening to him and not making fun of him when he made those comments about Joe Flacco earlier this week.
No. Mike Tomlin was wrong, because Mike Tomlin was worried about the wrong things. This game wasn't about Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco had a really good game. That's great. We love quarterbacks. He had a big game. Fine. Why did he have a big game? Because the Pittsburgh Steelers defense sucks. Because the Pittsburgh Steelers defense was a liability. In fact, I'll credit Ross Tucker, who was on the radio broadcast as I was in the car at one point during the game. And he said, as Jamar Chase was running wide open, he said, the problem here is the corners for the Steelers are too old and too slow to cover anybody man-to-man. Jamar Chase is open by 4 or 5 yards on every single route. How did they find Jamar? They found Jamar because this Steelers defense was an abject disaster. Maybe instead of worrying about Joe Flacco, they should have been worrying about what to do on their own defense to try and be able to better counter the best 1-2 or one of the best 1-2 wide receiver combinations in the league. This wasn't some wild quarterback play where you saw things you've never seen. There was some creative play calling. Kudos to Zach Taylor for the quarterback sneak of Joe Flacco. Never would have seen that coming. But at the end of the day,
bold, running a designed quarterback run for a 40-year-old quarterback who has been in the building for 5 seconds.
That was a bold strategy. There were Joe Flacco moments. Joe Flacco had to take advantage of it. I give all of the credit for that. But the fact is, the problem with the Pittsburgh Steelers last night, and the problem that is going to should scare Steelers fans for the rest of the year, has nothing to do with Joe Flacco and everything to do with the most expensive defense in the entire NFL laid that egg on Thursday night to that quarterback in that stadium. Like, that is not the Pittsburgh Steelers we're used to. If that's the Steelers defense we're going to trot out for the rest of the year, we finally got the definitive answer. We've been asking on this show for 2 weeks, why does Vegas still believe in the Baltimore Ravens? The real answer, maybe the real question should have been, why doesn't Vegas believe in the Pittsburgh Steelers? And as much as I've been saying it's the schedule, what we learned last night is it's this defense. If you bank on this Pittsburgh Steelers defense to win you a division, you're going to lose your money.
Look, I don't disagree with you in that. And to your point about the defense, 1000%. Because when you pay your defense more than any other team in the league is playing their defense, you don't expect to give up 33 points and 350 passing yards to Joe Flacco. Jalen Ramsey, have you ever seen that meme of the woman outside? I think it's outside of a Popeyes. She's a Popeyes employee and like her head's in her hand. She's smoking a cigarette on the bench. Like she just looks like she's had a day. That's Jalen Ramsey. Like that was Jalen Ramsey after the game last night. He was getting absolutely torched down after down last night. And I did see from Next Gen Stats that Joe Flacco had about over 2.5 seconds in the pocket almost every single play, an average of 2.5 seconds in the pocket. When you have TJ Watt on your defensive line, there is zero excuse for Joe Flacco to have that much time. Per Next Gen Stats, get about a 20% pressure rate in the pocket. 20% pressure rate when you're paying your defense that much, when you have elite stars defensively, like the Pittsburgh Steelers do, at least on that defensive front. That's not an issue of talent. That's all an issue of scheming. That's an issue of coaching. And that's an issue that I think we've seen from the Steelers defense really all season long, but they just continued to win games, so it's kind of gotten overlooked. But what we haven't looked into really, or what we haven't peeled back the curtain on enough is the quarterbacks that they were playing, or the teams that they have been playing, the teams that they have been beating, that they gave up 30 plus points to Justin Fields and the New York Jets, but it doesn't matter because we found a way to win. Then maybe Aaron Rodgers is covering up a lot of issues behind the curtain on this Pittsburgh Steelers defense, and Joe Flacco just kind of revealed all of them, because that Pittsburgh Steelers defense it's not good enough, period. But especially considering how much money they're investing into it, Fitz. And I think it just goes to show, one, the coaching isn't good enough, and two, you can pay guys like top corners and you can pay guys at the top of their position group, but that doesn't mean that they're going to deliver to the best of the ability of that position group.
And that's why the question, like, is this just a speed bump or is the sky falling? The sky is falling at this point for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think part of the reason
the sky is falling.
Part of the reason the sky is falling is that when you look at all of this, you look at the schedule that's upcoming, you look at the way that they played in this game, you looked at the fact that their pass rush couldn't get after it, you look at the fact that the back end of their defense couldn't cover, because it really felt like Flacco's approach was, the minute I get the ball, I'm going to run backwards 3 yards and just going to flick it, and Jamar's going to be there. You look at what's coming up with the Packers, the Colts, the Chargers. They got this Bengals team again. Then they got a Bears team that's playing a lot better right now. Like, nothing gets easier for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then maybe, to me, Caroline, the most important part, as the ardent supporter of Mike Tomlin through all of the chaos of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the number of times I've said, hey, Steelers fans, appreciate what you've got. You can't twist this any other way. The entire Steelers team got out-coached last night. When the Bengals figured out Jamar Chase was going to get that open and then said, you know what? We're just going to run this play over and over. We're going to figure out a way to get the ball to Jamar Chase over and over and over again. And there ain't a damn thing you can do about it. Like, at some point, and when we're sitting here yelling about the tuck rule needs to go away because it's too easy, it's too executable for the Eagles, that was Jamar Chase last night. He was the tuck rule for the Bengals. Everything they wanted to do, they did. And that man, Tomlin, had zero answers. That defense had zero adjustments. They didn't find any way to disrupt it. They didn't find any way to jam him. They didn't find any way to figure out how to bracket the coverage differently. They didn't switch to more zone instead of man. All these things that would be difficult in the game to do. But if you were prepared for it, you'd be okay. There was never an adjustment by the Pittsburgh Steelers that said, all right, we see you. You're going to try and beat us this way. We're not going to let you do it. They just sat there and took that beating like they were being bullied instead of being the bully. And that's different for Pittsburgh.
That's not a Mike Tomlin coach team. And as many flowers as I'd like to give Joe Flacco, because he 1000% deserves it, Also, the Bengals were able to do really whatever they wanted in the run game. Chase Brown had over 100 yards rushing last night. He averaged almost 10 yards a crack on the ground. Coming into this game, Chase Brown didn't have a single game on the ground over 50 yards. And he ran for over 100 last night. That is such an epic failure on behalf of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And look, Aaron Rodgers had a great game last night too. 23 of 34, 250 yards, 4 touchdowns. He had the 2 picks, but he also slung it 60 plus yards in that last 3 seconds of the game last night. Like, Aaron Rodgers has still got it. Like, Aaron Rodgers is still putting his team in position to win football games. I mean, when you put up 31 points in the National Football League, like, that's a game that you should be winning. So, Aaron Rodgers had a solid game last night, but this defense is going to fail Aaron Rodgers. This defense is going to fail a competent Steelers offense.
The Steelers are 4-2, and I will remind everybody that they have a win over the Jets, who suck. They got a win over the Patriots early in the season while they're getting their sea legs for them. I think that game
was a different Patriots team.
A different Patriots team. They get a win over the Vikings with their backup quarterback in. And then they get a win over the Browns, who suck. So if you're wondering why the sky is falling, the proof is in the pudding on how Pittsburgh got to where they were. We got a lot to break down in the NFL, not the least of which, if you're a Halloween fan like I am, you realize one thing: Michael Myers is never really dead. Coming up next, there's one quarterback in the NFL that we might have left for dead that might be making a comeback. Is Derek Carr going to go full Michael Myers?
I have to know, pull back the curtain real quick for us. Did Derek get any calls before this trade? Was there any interest there from the Bengals?
I can neither confirm nor deny, but I will say that Derek would like to be in a situation that obviously is a team that really needs a guy to come in and take him the long haul.
That is David Carr talking about Derek Carr on a topic that also came up on their podcast together. Everybody's being coy, like Michael Myers. You thought he was dead at the end of the second movie, but he wasn't. Just when you thought that Derek Carr's career might be headed off into the sunset for retirement, Caroline Fenton, it sounds like he's just looking around. Remember, Carr is 34. He'll be 35 going into next season. He retired with some shoulder issues. He's taking a year. He's getting himself healthy, but it sure as hell sounds to me like he's already looking around the landscape to figure out where his return could come.
And I would love to see it. Look, Derek Carr in New Orleans wasn't great. He is known very lovingly in the city of New Orleans as the Red Zone Zombie. But there's a lot of incompetent quarterbacking, I think that you could say, across the National Football League, and you can attribute that to whatever you want, whether it's evaluation that we have for quarterbacks, bad evaluation, or injuries that have plagued that position. But Derek Carr is still playing at a level that you would want an NFL quarterback to be playing at. And is he an elite quarterback? Absolutely not. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. But he's a competent NFL quarterback. I think he is one of the 32 best quarterbacks in the world right now. So I think that if you look around at the quarterback market, how many teams, Fitz, in the NFL would take Derek Carr, even at this point? What is he? Less than a year removed? 6 months, 8 months removed from retirement? I think there are several teams that would sign up for the efforts of Derek Carr over what they have right now. I mean, look, the Jets. If you're the Jets, you'd sign up for Derek Carr. If you're
Derek
Miami
Carr is
Dolphins,
so much better than Justin Fields. Derek Carr and Justin Fields don't
100%.
belong in the same conversation.
Oh, but I'm saying, if you were the Jets, you would absolutely upgrade for Derek Carr over what you're getting with Justin Fields. If you're a Miami Dolphins fan, I think that you can have a legitimate conversation about what we don't know about Derek Carr has to be better than what we do know right now about Tua Tagovailoa. What about Kyler Murray? Like, if you're an Arizona Cardinals fan, I don't think we have this conversation enough about Kyler, and maybe it's just because we don't talk about the Arizona Cardinals enough. But we saw Jacoby Brissett go out there and look better than what we have seen from Kyler Murray. If you're a Cardinals fan, can you ask yourself, can you convince yourself that, hey, look, Derek Carr might be able to come in here and be better than what Kyler Murray is giving us? I don't know for certain, but I'm willing to have that conversation.
I think what's interesting is that there's been plenty of fan bases over the years that have said, why don't you appreciate Derek Carr? And then you get Derek Carr and you don't really appreciate Derek Carr. This is a difficult, and look, as a person that I've mentioned this many times, I got a Raiders tattoo. Like, come on, I've lived, I've had the opportunity to meet Derek Carr. I've been around this team a lot. I've helped cover the team when Derek Carr was their quarterback. And what's interesting to me is that Raiders fans at the time just absolutely became outraged with the fact that Derek Carr's just good enough to win you games, but not good enough to win you the Super Bowl. And then you go through Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew and just this ever-revolving door of quarterbacks, and you ask yourself, okay, were we really appreciating Derek Carr enough? And I think there's a fine line. Like, we need a different word than suck in common sports vernacular, because Derek Carr certainly is not in the same tier as Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, but he's also not in the same tier as Josh Rosen from years ago. Like, we have to figure out how to categorize some of these quarterbacks that can win you some football games. Yeah, I went way back with my poll there.
Well, before 9:30 a.m. Josh Rosen.
Thank you.
Reference.
Thank you very much.
Expecting that
Josh
one.
Rosen woke up this morning and said, "God, I feel like I just caught a stray, and I don't know why." Here's what I would say.
Burning.
I think you have to understand Derek Carr's personality, and you have to have a coach that is good with that personality. Like, I had one scout tell me about Will Levis, and I'll never forget this. He told me about Will when Will was coming out of college, that he said, Will is like Derek Carr. He's an I love you man. He's the sort of quarterback that needs, when he makes a mistake, he needs a little bit of support. He needs an I love you. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that just works differently with different types of coaching. So you think about Gruden and Carr worked really well together because they grew sort of that mutual respect, and they were willing to yell at each other, but then also do the I love you man. That's the sort of support system Carr needs. I think if he's going to come back into the league, being with a coach that really understands him and backs him and supports him and feels like, man, this is my guy, would matter. That's why if Gruden were to come back and coach, I think Derek Carr would make a ton of sense. You draft a young guy, you develop a young guy, and you bring in Derek Carr to sort of bridge that gap. You run a couple of years with Derek Carr. To your point, you mentioned Tua. I can't imagine Mike McDaniel, a quarterback, at least somebody that seems to have offensive genius, according to when he first started in the league, working with Derek Carr. I think that could be very effective. I just think it's about the fit. And that's why you see the picture there. Wherever Gruden ends up, if he ends up coaching in the NFL again, the absolute first call I think he could make would be to Derek Carr. And it would make a ton of sense. Guy knows his offense. Guy knows how to run his offense. The guy's going to come in and he's going to play his tail off to the best of his ability. Is he going to make you elite? Maybe not. But is he going to let you suck? No. Like, there is some level of appreciation for what it means to have a pretty darn good quarterback. And Derek Carr has been an MVP candidate at times because he knows how to be at least a pretty darn good quarterback.
So where would that make sense? Because I totally hear you. And we can't ignore the years of that marriage right there between Derek Carr and John Gruden. Where would that make sense? An organization and an owner that would be willing to hire John Gruden. Let's not ignore the lawsuit that is currently ongoing and the controversy maybe isn't the right word, but the drama, I guess, is the correct word that you would open up in hiring John Gruden. So an organization and ownership that would be willing to do that, that is looking for a new head coach and is also looking for a more competent starting quarterback. Where does that make sense right now?
I mean, the honest answer to this, and I have no reporting, so I'm not trying to report this, but the honest answer is the same logo that's on their helmet right now. Like, look,
It's what it feels
at
like.
some point, Mark Davis stood up and has said so many times since he fired John Gruden, who, again, I will echo this as I've said every time, was fired for the things that he said. No matter how that came out, John Gruden said awful things, and that nothing changes that. Mark Davis has made it clear that he feels like the league had it out for him and the team by forcing him to fire Gruden. I don't know if hiring Gruden again is a good idea, but I know that right now the Raiders season isn't necessarily going the way people want it to go. Let's see how the rest of the season plays out. If the Raiders wake up and suddenly they're a 4-win football team and it looks like this is a huge, long rebuild and John Gruden wants to get back in the game with Derek Carr, I could see Mark Davis taking that phone call. If Pete Carroll doesn't want to see this thing through at his age, I could absolutely see that happening. I don't know that fans or anybody would love it, but it's a marriage that makes sense.
Time is a flat circle, right?
Yeah.
Let's bring back John Gruden and Derek Carr, but I'm with you. That's where it makes sense because Pete Carroll's not going to be with the Raiders forever. Let's be honest here of where he is in his career. And I think that Derek Carr right now, if we're going to talk about organizations that could use an upgrade at the quarterback position where Derek Carr would be an upgrade, I think Derek Carr would be an upgrade over what the Raiders are getting right now from Geno Smith. So I think that does make sense. And from the Raiders fan perspective, Fitz, like, would that make the fan base excited? Because I think right now, the Raiders fans can be really excited about the strong foundation that's at least being built with Pete Carroll. But if you're not winning games, then nobody cares about strong foundations. Like, nobody cares about culture when you're losing games. Does John Gruden and Derek Carr coming back to the Raiders get everybody all juiced up and excited and ready to buy some season tickets?
No, Derek Carr is maybe the most polarizing Raiders player I can remember in my lifetime because the fans have decided at some point, and I don't know why, the fans decided he sucked. And the minute the fans decided
and there's been some
sucked,
polarizing players with that organization.
Yeah. But see, the funny thing is the fans galvanize under players. It's like, oh, the league gave up on this guy. We're going to bring him in. The league doesn't respect him. We're going to make him a Raider. That's what Raiders fans have done forever. At some point, fans decided that Derek Carr just wasn't it. And the number of fans that rejoiced when he left the building, to me, was pretty stunning. And look, this is where Raiders fans are going to kill me for this take. This is going to get put up, and I'm going to get murdered for it. I just think at some point you have to look at it and say, okay, well, short-term, long-term, Derek Carr, like I said, he'll be 35 going into next season. So if you're telling me that they're going to bring back Gruden and then a guy to run Gruden's offense while they mentor a young quarterback that they're going to have to find in the draft, I don't think that that's a terrible strategy. Let's see how it plays out with Geno and Pete Carroll. Hopefully they right the ship. But if they don't, I think that's still a smart strategy for anybody. If Aaron Glenn sucks with the Jets and they go one and done, you want to tell me, like, the easiest way to implement your offense if you bring in Gruden is to bring in Carr with them because Carr knows exactly what to do.
That would be the other organization that could use an overhaul at the head coaching position and at the quarterback position. And I think Woody Johnson and the Jets ownership would welcome that. I don't think that that's an ownership group that would shy away from the controversy that would ensue if you bring in John Gruden. So I think that would be the other one. I think every other potential situation or scenario in the NFL, like I think about the Tennessee Titans, for example. Well, yeah, you got to hire John Gruden, but you're not bringing in Derek Carr. You just drafted Cam Ward with the #1 overall pick. Maybe there are some other teams that could use an upgrade at the quarterback position, but you feel really good about your head coach and you're not willing to move on from that coach and bring in John Gruden and deal with all of the circus that would come from it. So those two franchises feel like the ones, feel like the fit would work.
And remember, he did not take any of the calls for the Bengals as far as we can tell because he's not there, which tells you he still wants to be a starter long-term if he comes back. All right, let's talk about more teams that have absolutely blown it this season and a couple of teams that are shocking us. Ben Arthur going to join us next. We'll get a full report on the AFC South. This is Ben Arthur's quarterback stock market. Some notable names you see there. Baker at number 1, Dak at 2, Drake May at 5, Hurts at 12, Jackson Dart rising up to 22. Ben Arthur, Fox Sports, joins us right now on Yahoo Sports Daily. Caroline Fenton, Jason Fitz. Ben, thanks for the time, man. We appreciate this. I want to talk a little bit of quarterbacks because one of the quarterbacks that has shocked all of us is Daniel Jones. What did you see this coming? How did we get here with DJ?
I don't think anyone could say that they saw this coming, right? I mean, this is a guy who really struggled in New York. I mean, there was so much going wrong there around him in terms of coaching, personnel. He seemed to be really shaken at some points, but I think we're seeing like the power of kind of being around a new situation, new coaches. I mean, we've seen guys be able to rejuvenate their career, right? We've seen Baker do it. We've seen Sam Darnold do it. We've seen Geno Smith do it, even though he's kind of struggling with the Raiders right now, but with the Seahawks, he was playing at a high level. And so I do think there is a lot of power in getting into a new situation. And I think the year in Minnesota helped him a lot, kind of taking a step back, being around Kevin O'Connell, who we know is really great with working with quarterbacks. And now in India, I think something I've heard is that he and Shane Steichen are very much in lockstep in terms of that they have like the same kind of maniacal focus when it comes to football. They seem to kind of be on the same wavelength, and he has probably the best talent that he's ever had around him. He has a good O-line, and obviously Jonathan Taylor is one of the best backs in the NFL. So you combine all that, you see a Daniel Jones playing with a lot of confidence. You're seeing him, try these throws that you'd never see him try in New York. I think that confidence is kind of oozing out of him. And yeah, I am shocked, but again, I think we've seen quarterbacks be able to turn it around once they get in the right situation.
Yeah, it does feel like whatever magic fairy pixie dust Kevin O'Connell has been sprinkling on some of these quarterbacks that come just into his atmosphere. I mean, he's turned Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones both from bust to total ballers. But I do want to stick in the AFC South because you do such a wonderful job covering this division. The Tennessee Titans host Mike Vrabel and the New England Patriots this weekend. This game is a really big deal for Amy Adams-Strunk and ownership and leadership in Tennessee. You live in Nashville. You spent a long time covering the Tennessee Titans. Why does this game mean so much to an ownership group that fired Mike Vrabel?
Yeah, I think how we've seen Amy Adams-Strunk operate, I mean, she really cares about certain games, right? Like she really cares when they face the Texans. She really cares. She really seems to care about like perception too, right? Like how John Robinson got fired just 2 days after AJ Brown just put it on the Titans in Philly a couple years ago. I remember being at that game. She really seems to care about perception in that regard. She doesn't like to get embarrassed. And this is another game to where you kind of have earmarked in terms of like how she may potentially respond just because of the history with Mike Vrabel. We know the success that he had here in Nashville, but we also know how unceremonious it ended, right? And there were a lot of reports, rumors, stuff going on behind the scenes where there may have been sort of an ego clash or whatever it was. And so this game is going to be really important for her. And I do think what Mike Vrabel coming to town, what he's made the Patriots to be so far this season, I do think perception played a big role in maybe firing Brian Callahan before this game because I think we all kind of expect the Patriots to potentially walk in here and kind of put it on the Titans, knowing the state of their team, and I think for them to potentially make that move right after Vrabel coming to town, I do think the optics wouldn't have been so great for that. And I think Brian Callahan was a coach that seemed to be a dead man walking for quite some time. And if you're going to do it, maybe do it before Mike Vrabel comes to town. And so, again, that just kind of goes back to optics, I think, which really play a role in how Amy Adams-Strunk operates. I mean, she doesn't speak publicly, like she hasn't taken interviews as long as I've covered the Titans, but we do know just behind the scenes, she doesn't like getting embarrassed. There are certain games against certain people that she likes to earmark, considering the history, like the Houston dynamic, everything else. So yeah, this is going to be a really interesting thing to watch. And what I'm looking for from the Titans is, do they get that interim coach boost? I think even when we have seen in the past coaches get fired and an interim coming in, the team, even though they may be bad, they do get kind of that emotional boost, so to speak, right? And I do think that the Titans are going to come out swinging. And so I think this is going to be a really fun game to watch.
Okay, so let's talk about the quarterback then, because Cam Ward fell 3 spots to 30 in your ranking. Now, you mentioned earlier systems matter. So, and I think that's a huge part of this. So let's presume, there's a lot of benefit of the doubt here, Ben, but let's presume that the Titans hire the right guy for the right system, for the right pick for Cam Ward. What do you think the ceiling is for that quarterback if he gets in the right system with the right coach?
I think Cam Ward can be really, really good. I honestly do. I think he has legit franchise quarterback caliber potential, even as bad as it's been for him individually, for the Titans around him trying to support him. Like, we have seen those wow moments. We have seen those wow throws. We've seen those, like, oh my gosh, how did he do that? We saw that game-winning drive in Arizona. So he does have the potential, and it's just going to come down to, being able to support him and everything. And so yeah, that's kind of what I'm looking for. But I think the biggest thing that the Titans are going to need is going to be beyond the X's and O's stuff, beyond having that right system around Cam Ward. I think they're really going to need a CEO type of coach, a coach who can really demand the respect of a room. Honestly, a coach similar to what Mike Vrabel was, because we know how unstable that this franchise is. They need someone who's going to be able to come in, set the tone, not take any BS, maybe more of an alpha type of personality. I think this is what this franchise needs more than anything. We can talk about kind of what Cam Ward needs. They need to play maybe a certain scheme, do certain route concepts and everything. But at the macro level, a young quarterback who's developing, they need stability. They need stability. They need infrastructure around them. And I think that starts with getting a CEO type of coach. So that's kind of what I'm looking for.
And I totally agree with you that this is a critical hire for the Tennessee Titans. It's not too late for Cam Ward, but if you continue to make the wrong hires, it'll get late early. Who is that guy, in your opinion? Maybe what are some names that are floating around Nashville that you've heard, and who do you think would be the right hire for the Tennessee Titans?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think Mike McCarthy is one guy I'd look at, just because of his pedigree, Super Bowl experience. Obviously, we know what he did with Aaron Rodgers. I think, honestly, I don't know if people have talked about him as much, but Jeff Hafley, the Packers defensive coordinator, because he was a head coach, not in the NFL, but at the college level. And he knows what it takes to kind of command the respect of a room, to get guys to buy in, to listen, to kind of set that standard. And we know he's doing a good job in Green Bay. They obviously just got Micah Parsons not too long ago. But he's probably one guy who I think people maybe haven't talked about as much nationally, who I think would be a really good fit for Tennessee. But yeah, I think former NFL head coaches, I mean, really coordinators who you kind of look at that maybe kind of embody more of that persona, right? If they're a brainiac when it comes to X's and O's, great. But again, I do think they really need someone who can command the respect of a locker room, because I don't think Brian Callahan really, I don't think he had that. And we know what Mike Vrabel can do in that department, and I do think they need someone closer to that.
Now, in fairness, Ben, it didn't look like Liam Cohen was the sort of guy that would command a locker room either with that whole judo. But I think every organization needs something different, right? What has clicked for Liam Cohen? Are we paying enough attention to the job he's doing?
Yeah, I don't think we are. And look, like being in Jacksonville, being in that market, I think it's kind of natural for people to kind of overlook them, underrate them. But yeah, I think you do make a good point. Like as a coordinator, as an assistant, we really didn't see this side of Liam Cohen. I think that's one thing to consider too. When guys maybe get into certain positions, they can embody that, right? Like maybe they kind of defer to the head coach or whoever their boss is, right? But then they get into that role, and that leadership, those attributes really flourish. And so I do think when the Titans do eventually go through that process, they're going to have to look closely and see if, okay, can we project this guy into that role? But yeah, as far as what Liam Cohen is doing in Jacksonville, I mean, it's been quite impressive. And I think from a fan standpoint, from a media standpoint, seeing how that they've given us an inside look at kind of those locker rooms when they have lost games. I don't think I've ever seen a team that has those video cameras rolling when they have lost the game and the coach is delivering the message. Even in those moments, you could see how much respect that those guys have for him. And I think with what he's done, I mean, helping Trevor Lawrence in terms of getting the run game going, and I think how he's empowered the defense and DC Anthony Campanile, just how good that they've been, how opportunistic they've been, getting takeaways. Their pass rush has been strong, and so Trevor Lawrence still isn't playing at that level that I know that they want, but I think they're getting so much from everything around him that it's really kind of made it easier for him. And I think that's kind of what you want in a coach, right? Like someone who's going to make it theoretically as easy as possible for your quarterback in terms of setting everything else up around him. And I think Liam Cohen has done a really good start in that regard. And yeah, he's certainly in the kind of the early mix for Coach of the Year.
I totally agree with you. I mean, it was not that long ago that the Jags made what I think was one of the worst hires in the history of the league in hiring Urban Meyer. It was an abject disaster. Now, turn it around just a few years later, Liam Cohen has this thing humming. Before we get you out of here, Ben, though, I do want to touch on one more team in the division that we have yet to touch on, and that is the Houston Texans. Now, they've won back-to-back games, but they're still 2-3. This team has been struggling a lot more than I expected them to. Why? With the amount of talent on this roster, why are the Texans now below 500?
Honestly, the Texans' struggles early in the season wasn't all that surprising to me. I was telling a lot of people this. I just didn't like what they did on the offensive line. I mean, trading Laramie Tunsil, I think, speaks for itself. Like your quarterback's blindside protector, but I just don't think that they made did an adequate job kind of revamping that unit for CJ Stroud. So this offensive line wasn't that good last year, and this year, at least at the start, they weren't doing that well either. They have a rookie left tackle that they've kind of been mixing different pieces up front, and so I think it's still very much been a work in progress, even in these two games that they've won. And so, and I think beyond Nico Collins, they're still trying to figure out, okay, like who are those top targets going to be around Stroud? And so, and then you have a new offensive play caller on top of that, and Nick Caley, a guy who's never called plays before. And so I think there are a lot of moving parts there. I think for them, getting these two games, even though against bad teams, right? Like they beat, the Titans after that fourth quarter explosion, and then they just poured it on to a pretty bad Ravens team. And they're going to have their first test here, like coming out the bye against the Seahawks team. I believe they're at Seattle. That's now we're going to see, okay, like, are they actually going to be legit? Because they started awfully, and then they played kind of two bad teams, and now they're going to play a great team. And it's like, okay, how is that going to look? And so, but I think the biggest thing, like when you, regardless of the caliber of opponent or whatever, I think when you are able to get in the win column, you build that confidence, and confidence is a really, really powerful thing in the NFL, regardless of perception and everything. And so So yeah, I'm really intrigued to see how they play in that matchup. But look, they have a Super Bowl caliber defense. They are elite on that side of the ball. If they can get more consistency from CJ, from that offensive line, get more guys to step up in that receiving room, I do think this could be a good team, a contending team down the stretch.
Ben, we appreciate your time and your insight. Thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for the insight. Enjoy the rest of the season, brother.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys for having me.
Thanks, Ben. Always
giving us
appreciate
a
it.
breakdown on all things AFC South. Coming up, I don't even know what to say that's going to be better than that picture. We're going to talk about the Giants. Three games, 3 opening drive touchdowns in the Jackson Dart era. 54 games, 4 opening drive touchdowns for Brian Daboll's first 5 quarterbacks. Something is hitting different, and that is absolutely undeniable. And now we get a big game this weekend as the Giants travel to Mile High to take on the Broncos, and that Broncos defense, which is elite, but a Broncos team that has been a little bit up and down. The standings tell me it's 2-4 for the Giants and 4-2 for the Broncos. Vegas tells me that Denver is favored by 7. I get all of that, but man, Caroline, if Dart pulls off the road upset here, I think we got to start having a much different conversation about the New York Giants.
100% we do. And I do think that after the last Thursday night football game against the Eagles, that we are already starting to have that conversation. Just how dominant the Giants offense looked against that Philadelphia Eagles defense. And frankly, how fun Jackson Dart and Cam Scadaboo was. Whether it was Jackson Dart high-fiving the ref or Cam Scadaboo just being a bull in a china shop. Like, the story and the personality of those two, just the kind of, like, fun young college feel that it felt like those two had, those are kind of dominating the story. And I think we are starting to look at the Giants a little bit differently, that no longer do I look at a matchup on any other team's schedule with the New York Giants and say, oh, the Giants, that's an automatic dub for that team. No longer is this Giants team one that you can write off, or is it no longer is it an easy out. We will look at this Giants team differently if they get a win on the road in Denver. I also think at the same time, we're going to have to start to look at this Broncos team differently, because I think going into this season, we had high hopes for Denver. Look, this defense has the ability to be a top 5, maybe even the top unit in the league. That Bo Nix under Sean Payton, as good as he looked last year, getting that team to the playoffs, and he can take that next step forward. we haven't seen really a return on those thoughts or those takes or those expectations for the Broncos. We have at times, but they haven't been incredibly consistent. And I know that it's kind of, we have a tendency as sports fans and as sports media members to have one story, one takeaway from every single game, whether it's about this team or that team. Did this team win it or did that team lose it? If the Giants get a win on the road, I think it is equally about the Giants, the progress they're making, how Jackson Dart looks like the quarterback of the future in New York, and also how the Broncos have fallen flat of expectations. Both things I think can be true at the same time if that does in fact come to fruition.
Well, look, and part of the reason that I'm in on the Giants for this game and to make it a tough game is it should be strength on weakness. Like, we came into the season with some pretty hefty expectations for the Giants, particularly on the defensive line. The defense hasn't necessarily played as well as any of us thought that the Giants defense would play, but you're taking on a Bo Nix that has clearly regressed. And look, we just had the numbers up on why it's been bad for Bo this season. To simplify it for everybody, they're 4-2. They played 6 games. In 3 of their 6 games, Bo Nix has had 176 yards or less passing in these games. Like, they are not winning games because Bo Nix is willing them to victory. They're winning games because they have one of the best defenses in the league, which we expected, and they're playing pretty smart, controlled football to minimize the damage that Bo Nix can do. That's a much different conversation. Like, you start talking about the leap, and that's why I think it's fair to talk about benefit of the doubt when it's earned. It's fair to talk about the eye test. Like, we're so early in Jackson Dart's career that little things feel like big things because we're trying to see exactly who Jackson is as a quarterback. That's not the case for Bo Nix. Bo Nix is now 6 games into his second season. We expected some sort of big moment forward, and that's why I always say that at some point, year 2, midway through year 2 into year 3, is the biggest moment of a young quarterback's career because the league is adjusting to you. Can you adjust to the league? So far, the league is adjusting to Bo Nix. I would dare to say that the Broncos are winning games in spite of Bo Nix, not because of Bo Nix. And that's fine. If you built a team that's capable of winning with Bo Nix, great. But if we're going to sit here and talk about strength on strength and weakness on weakness, really the defensive line of the Giants should be a strength that's able to disrupt a weakness in Bo Nix. The question is, will he make mistakes? If Bo Nix doesn't play clean in this football game, the Giants will win. They are not they are a 2-4 team. I get it. You are who your record is. The Giants are better than that on the field right now.
That's what it feels like, at least. And I think that Bo Nix against that Giants defensive front, with Kayvon Thibodeau, Brian Burns, Abdul Carter, so on and so forth, like how much investment the Giants have made in the defensive front, like that is a matchup to watch. I also think that's a matchup to watch on the other side. I mean, Nick Bonito leads the NFL in sacks. And so is it Jackson Dart up against this Broncos defense as a whole? I'll say defensive front, but defense as a whole with one of the best, if not the best corners in the league in Pat Surtain. But I'll ask you, of those 2 matchups, because that is where I think the game will be won and lost. Quarterback against defensive fronts on both sides. But if you have to pick, who do you trust more? Bo Nix against this Giants defensive front, or Jackson Dart against this Broncos defense that has the makings of being one of the best in the league? Who do you trust more? And am I crazy for saying that I think I trust Jackson Dart more against that Broncos defense than I do Bo Nix in year 2 in the league with Sean Payton as his head coach against the Giants defense?
No, and the funny thing is the Broncos defense is much better than the Giants defense. The reason I'm with you, the reason I trust Jackson Dart more is that Jackson Dart has proven that, hey, he's just going to figure out a way to make a play. And there's something to that, especially in your first year as a player. It's like, hey, I'm starting. I'm not going to force the ball here. I'm just going to tuck it and run. I'm just going to tuck it and find a way to get a first down. I'm going to tuck it and find a way to make a positive play. I think that's one of the underrated things about Jackson Dart. I don't want to sit here and say that Jackson Dart is some great running, scrambling quarterback. I don't know that that's necessarily a perfect analogy for who he is. But he is the sort of guy that can find positive out of negative. And so, to me, that's why I trust him, because when Denver thinks they've got him, they're going to have to get him. They're going to have to get him. They're going to have to sit him down. They're going to have to make sure that he doesn't turn a broken play into positive yardage, because I think that's one of the sneaky things that he did against the Eagles that helped them win. It's one of the sneaky things that he does in this offense that helps him, and it's an element that I don't think Bo is as comfortable going to try and make something out of nothing. I think Bo is more likely to just tuck it and just forget about it. Jackson's going to make a play.
And I think that's what makes Jackson Dart so fun to watch. And as our producer Doug Branson says, Jackson Dart and Cam Scadaboo are deeply unserious people, but we have to take them seriously. And that is, I think, the perfect way to kind of summarize those two, and especially Jackson Dart, that from what we have seen, Jackson Dart, and even going back to college and his time at Ole Miss, Jackson Dart has a level of confidence, has a level of swagger that you just can't really quite seem to shake him. That he is willing to go mano against, it doesn't matter if it's a 300-pound linebacker, he doesn't care. He has this level of confidence that can carry him to say, I am going to make a play, and I don't care what you're going to throw at me. While it feels like Bo Nix has probably a more solid infrastructure around him, has a more healthy environment to continue to evolve around him. Bo Nix has shown us that he can get a little wiggy. That Bo Nix, you don't really know which Bo Nix that you are going to get in the Bo Nix experience, that you throw, all sorts of pressure his way. I don't trust Bo Nix to take care of the football. I don't trust Bo Nix to be able to just kind of slough that off, forget about it, be a goldfish, move on to die another day or to die another play. So that's not to say that I don't think Bo Nix is a good quarterback. That's not to say that I don't think the Broncos can win this football game. Because if I have to pick today, I will pick the Broncos to win this football game. It just feels like Jackson Dart is more trustworthy in the face of pressure.
I am going to take the Giants to win this football game and pull off the upset.
Ooh,
and I think the energy is
like
palpable. I think the energy is palpable. And Jackson Dart, Cam Scadaboo might not be serious people, but sometimes it's that energy in a locker room that reminds everybody why they play the game, and it brings an extra kick to what they do. All right, that's just a little preview of our disagreements. Coming up next, we'll figure out what the Monday headlines are going to look like. Extra, read all about it. We're going to figure out how the weekend's going to play out next. It's never too early for hour number 2 of Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. Got an hour left to hang out with you on this Friday edition. But as we take a look at everything going on across the sports landscape, we figured we would actually go full Miss Chloe. You're too young to understand the reference, Caroline, but there used to be a 1-900 number that you could call where Miss Chloe was a psychic, and she would read you your psychic readings, all right? So I'm old enough to remember that. We're going to go full Miss Chloe here. I won't use the Jamaican accent. She did. And give you our Monday morning headlines. So we're going to give you our Monday morning headlines, predicting what's going to happen this weekend. Full extra read all about it. Newsies, You get to go first, my friend. So I'm going to give you your first Monday morning headline. See if I agree with you. What you got?
I'm going to deep dive into my witchiness, look into my crystal ball, and predict that on Monday morning, we will be opening up our newspapers to a headline that reads, after Florida falls to Mississippi State at home, Billy Napier has been relieved of his duties as the head coach of the Florida Gators. That come Monday, after losing to Mississippi State, Billy Napier will be fired. That is the headline on the Yahoo Sports Daily.
By the way, Yahoo Sports Daily is a electric looking newspaper that I would subscribe to. Subscribe to our newsletter, by the way. Get it. Kendall does a great job. Billy Napier fired would require a loss this weekend. What happens if Florida wins, my friend? Not so fast. What if Florida, knowing that their coach is up against it, seeing days of reports that things are on the fritz, seeing that their coach could be on the outs, it's the one thing that brings everybody together. Suddenly, they remember that you're not supposed to turn the ball over every drive. Suddenly, Florida remembers how to be Florida, and they win. Couldn't it happen?
Sure, it could happen. But this isn't the first time that Florida locker room has heard about, rumblings about Billy Napier being fired. We talked about that going into this season, and they still found a way to lose to South Florida. Let's not forget about that. Let's not forget that we've been talking about Billy Napier being a dead man walking for well over a year now, if not 2 years now. So if the Billy Napier getting fired talk hasn't completely changed this team by now, I don't think that it will. And look, Jeff Lebby and what he's been able to do at Mississippi State now in just year 2, I think is really impressive. It might not show up in the win-loss column, but Mississippi State took Tennessee to overtime. Mississippi State and Texas A&M in the first half was an incredibly close game. I believe at half it was 7-3 or whatever it was. It was a very low-scoring affair until Texas A&M figured things out in the second half. But Mississippi State looks like a much better football team this year than they have in quite some time. So it's not impossible to think that Mississippi State could finally break through and get a win here. Billy Napier's not going to get fired if they beat Mississippi State, but if they do beat Mississippi State, wouldn't be the first time that a coach got fired after winning a game. Jimbo Fisher beat Mississippi State in 2023 and got fired the next day. So it is not unprecedented that could happen. I mean, beating Mississippi State, sure, that's great and all. That's not going to save Billy Napier's job. If it's not Monday, at some point this season.
Now, if there's anything I've learned in our few months doing this show together, and I've known for years of knowing Caroline, if you're going to disagree with her on college football picks, you're probably going to lose. That being said, I'm stubborn. That's part of being a man. I'm just going to say no, Florida rolls, and all of a sudden Billy Napier is fine. All right, let me give you my first headline. We're going to stick in college football, see if I can sell you on this headline.
Love it.
The Monday morning headline, extra, read all about it. Georgia's season comes crashing down after they lose this weekend to Ole Miss, and suddenly playoff hopes are dashed for the Bulldogs. Are you buying it?
I also love that picture that our producers chose, because Kirby's looking around like, I don't know what happened. That was my best Kirby Smart impression. I don't know what happened. What the hell? No, I do not buy this. I do not buy into this, because in order for Georgia's season to come crashing down, they have to lose to Ole Miss at home this weekend. I do not think that is going to happen. This Georgia team always finds a way to win. It's like they sleepwalk in the first quarter, in the first half entirely. Then all of a sudden in the second half, it's like, oh, wait, we're playing a football game? Okay. Because they did that against Tennessee. They were down 21-7 at one point in the first half. They came back and found a way to win. They were down 10-0, almost was 17-0 at Jordan-Hare last week against Auburn, and they found a way to win. Even if it was just from like a little bit of help from the referees, they still found a way to win. This Georgia team does not lose at home. I know they lost at home to Alabama. They just somehow find a way to lose to Alabama. I don't know what it is. They don't lose at home. And I don't think that Kirby Smart is going to let his team get got by Ole Miss 2 years in a row, especially when Ole Miss had to find a way to win in the trenches last year. And they did that when they were so solid in the trenches. Walter Nolan, Princely Mamiellan, so much talent on that defensive front for Ole Miss last year. Well, they don't have those guys anymore. In order to beat Georgia, you have to out Georgia. And to out Georgia, you have to be more physical in the trenches. I don't think this Ole Miss team has the ability to be the more physical team in the trenches against a lot of teams in the SEC, especially not Georgia. So I'm not buying what you're selling here.
I mean, Ole Miss last year was beat specifically to try and beat Georgia, right? Like, that's why they went out to the transfer portal and said, we're going to get the biggest boys we can to beat Georgia. And I realize this is a new year, but hear me out. I think there are a couple of things play into this. One, a little bit of recency bias, because I was sure that Kirby Smart would be able to confuse Ty Simpson in the Alabama offense, that his brilliant defensive mind and the great players on that defensive side of the ball would be able to make things so difficult for Alabama that they would get a win there. And that didn't happen, right? And what we saw instead was Alabama, particularly on the outside, went after their corners and had some real success doing it. So that's stuck in my mind, number one. Lane Kiffin saw that too. And I do believe, for whatever we want to say about Lane Kiffin and the fact that his team lays at least one egg in a game it shouldn't every single year, if there's Ole Miss is just Ole Miss is always going to let you down at some point. Man, this isn't the one. This isn't the one, because Lane's seen all of this. He's going to be able to exploit it and expose it. He's got a quarterback that's playing hot right now. You give me Ole Miss in this opportunity to really put some sort of a stick of fork in a moment, because here's the other part of it. I love chaos. You know I'm an agent of chaos. And we all saw it last year, just the absolute screaming of how could you leave a team from the SEC with 2 losses out of the college football playoff. Guess exactly where Georgia's going to be, right smack in the middle of that conversation if they lose this game, because it's going to put them far enough out that they're not likely to get to the SEC championship game. If they can't get to the SEC championship game, they can only live on the resume they have. If they can only live on the resume they have, things get really touchy for them if it's trying to make the college football playoff. Look, the football gods want this. I want this. The football gods want this. Have I changed your mind?
No. But to your point about chaos in the SEC, it is a valiant effort, and I do appreciate it. My mind's not changing. You talk about being stubborn. I will match you with that as well. If you talk about chaos, I do think that Georgia beating Ole Miss provides more of a chaos scenario, because right now Ole Miss is undefeated. They don't have a loss in conference play, obviously. So Georgia would then hand them their first loss in conference play. So now we have a bunch of teams in the SEC, all with 1 losses in conference play. And there's a long, long list of what the tiebreaker scenario would be for the SEC championship game. I want that. I want like 5 or 6 teams in the SEC to all be in that conversation for tiebreaker scenarios, to the point that we're going to have to do what we had in the women's SEC basketball tournament with South Carolina and Texas ping pong balls all flying around, and Greg Sankey had to pick one for whoever would be the number 1 seed in the SEC tournament. Like, that's what I want. I want that agent of chaos for several teams to have 1 loss in the Southeastern Conference.
All right, so give me your next Monday morning headline.
Okay, speaking of chaos, this is the ultimate chaos scenario. So picture it. You wake up on Monday morning, you pour your cup of coffee, and a headline reads, Texas A&M falls out of the top 10 after losing to Bobby Petrino and Arkansas. What do we think? Your thoughts? Because my thought process here. Woo, pig suey. Well, I mean, this game's always weird. This game is so inexplicably weird. For the better part of the last 5 to 10 years, this game has been decided by 1 score. Texas A&M was a top 25 team. Arkansas, we kind of left for dead at that point last year. That was a 4-point game. You go back to 2022, Texas A&M, again, a top 25 team. That game came down to the wire. It was a 2-point game. This game went to overtime several times over the last decade or so. This game's always weird. Now, it's normally played at Jerry's World. That's not happening anymore with conference expansion, but this game's in Fayetteville. This game's in Fayetteville, Fitzy. And these Hog fans have a new, refreshed sense of what is possible since Sam Pittman has been fired. Are you buying what I'm selling? A&M's out of the top 10?
Number one, I'm buying this newspaper. Gig 'em out of the top 10. Great headline. That is a well
Fantastic.
That chef's kiss, absolutely perfectly done on that headline.
Whoop.
And I'm buying what you're selling. I think the Bobby Petrino effect, like, look, we got to couch two different conversations. Bobby Petrino, the human being, versus Bobby Petrino, the head coach. And there's a reason why Bobby Petrino, the head coach, is so good that we forgive Bobby Petrino, the human being, whether we should or we shouldn't. Like, at some point, what you see right now to me with the Petrino effect is we are like, this is a man that wants this job. And this is a man that is going to come in and do everything he can with this team to go out and get them fired up, to have them ready to play. And by the way, he's one of the better college football head coaches. He just is. And so if we can couch two separate conversations, again, I can't say it loud enough, Caroline, that we're looking differently at the person than we are at the head coach. Man, I love everything you're throwing here. Every ounce of what you're throwing here makes a ton of sense. And this is an Arkansas team that has had talent. That talent has never been the issue for this team, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Talent has not been the issue for Arkansas for the last several years. Talent is not the issue right now. The question is, can you get them to execute, and can you get them not to make key mistakes in key moments? I love this, and you're right. An upset would result in Texas A&M falling out of the top 10 and even more chaos. I will give you one more.
Chaos.
And this one doesn't bring me great joy because of the helmet that's behind you and our friendship.
I know. Get it over with.
My Monday morning headline, and I can't believe I'm saying this in a college football segment, Vanderbilt headed to the CFP. That's my Monday morning headline, anchor down in the CFP. And I know this sounds wild, but we asked ourselves coming into this, what would it take for Vanderbilt to have a realistic shot at the college football playoff? The landmark win they would get by beating LSU. And I don't trust LSU to score points against Clark Lee. The way this Vandy team is built, and we talk a lot about Diego Pavia, their quarterback, for a lot of reasons. He's just fun to watch. Frankly, screw all of the rules. I want him to stick in college football for the next 20 years. I don't give a damn about any of your rules. I just want to see more Diego Pavia. But that being said, that's not even the key to this game. The key to this game is that they actually have the speed. They actually have the swarming defense. They have the help defense required. The number of guys that swarm to the ball for Vandy is impressive when you watch them on the defensive side of the football. I think they're up for the task to limit LSU's offense, which isn't that much of a task. So then the question is, who can reach 20? Because 20 feels like it's a win in this. I trust wildly Vandy's offense to get there more than I do LSU. I think Vandy gets the win, and in that process becomes a legitimate CFP contender. They are this year's Indiana. They're going to shock the world and end up in the CFP if they win this game.
I like to pride myself on being a realistic fan. I'm not pessimistic, not optimistic. I try and be as realistic as humanly possible. We all know as sports fans, we're not going to be totally realistic. It's just more fun when I'm realistic about my team and not like when you say it. Like when you say it, it makes me mad. But I get it. We're all being realistic about this game. We're all being realistic about how bad this LSU offense has been. It makes me look back on the years of 2019 and 2023 with Joe Burrow and Jaden Daniels respectively. Respectively. And I just look back and think about the good old days. I don't think you're wrong here. I really don't. This LSU offense has yet to put up 20 points against a Power 4 opponent all season long. Vanderbilt has a really solid defense. They're not going to make this easy. LSU has struggled to run the football. Garrett Nussmeier doesn't look great. He looked a little bit more explosive last week against South Carolina, but that's also not a South Carolina defense. I think that really scares you. So I don't think you're wrong. I do agree with this. And if Vanderbilt gets a win over LSU, that will be the conversation of a legitimate path for Vanderbilt to get to the CFP. Vanderbilt still has a tough road ahead. They still have to play Texas. They still have to go to Tennessee. They still have a lot of tests ahead of them. But knocking off LSU would be one massive, first step in that path. The one way that I think that you could be wrong, and the one path that I feel like LSU has, is the framework that Alabama had in place and how Alabama took down Diego Pavia and Vanderbilt. It was turning them over in the red zone. They turned the ball over twice in the red zone. LSU's defense, we talk a lot about how bad LSU's offense is, and I think that's a fair conversation because LSU has, I think statistically right now, the worst offense in the SEC. That's a fair conversation to be had. I'm not saying that's wrong. But I don't think we're talking enough about how good this LSU defense is. Again, I just said that LSU has yet to score more than 20 points against any Power 4 opponent, and they're 5-1. Like, that's how good the defense has been. So if the defense can keep Diego Pavia in check, which they were able to do against Lenora Sellers last week with Harold Perkins and Weeks and this Blake Baker coached defense that loves to swarm the quarterback, that loves to blitz, if they're able to keep Diego Pavia at least contained to a certain extent and turn Vanderbilt over and give Garrett Nussmeier in this brutal offense just a few more opportunities to score, that's the path. I just can't trust that all of those things are going to come together against this Vanderbilt team that has been so disciplined.
Unfortunately for you, I think Vandy's going to get the win, but maybe fortunately for the show, we'll just throw it out to the bosses. Yahoo Sports Daily live from Nashville next week as we get ready for a game day getting there on Saturday. I'm just throwing it out there. Just put it out for the bosses. All right.
Yeah.
We'll get some insight. Those are our predictions for the weekend. Coming up next, we'll talk to the great Laura Rutledge about what she's seeing in the SEC and the NFL. Coming up next. There are promotional photos, and then there are promotional photos. I'm just saying I am now wildly hungry, and we're going to have to figure out how to eat all this honey baked ham. Because Laura Rutledge joining us right now on Yahoo Sports Daily, Caroline Fenton, Jason Fitz. Always happy to have you here, my friend. And I'm looking at this honey baked ham with the take and serve sliders, especially considering your family, your husband, somebody I know very, very well. How are we feeding the family with this? Let's go.
We're feeding them with all of it, right? And you know, Jason, our schedule is pretty nuts. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. So the take and serve sliders from Honey Baked are the best possible thing because you literally just grab them, go, serve them. They are excellent. In fact, my two kids last night, we were eating these for dinner and they kept going back for more. So kids love them. Adults love them. This is not planned. I just had them for lunch because they keep really well. So I was like, you know what? We got some left. I'm going to keep eating them. The thing that's great about these two is they have the honey baked ham, the signature ham. You're not going to get a better ham. It's delicious. Turkey, cheddar, bacon. It comes with some different sauces you can put on there. Just absolutely delicious. And these are really good. If you do want a little bit of extra prep, which it doesn't take much time, you can do the take and bake sliders, which the difference there is you just pop in the oven for like 10 minutes and then cover them in this amazing garlic herb butter that comes in the whole package. So it's all right there for you. And then guests are like, wow, you went over the top. This is amazing. So I absolutely love it. And it's just perfect for football season, perfect for your tailgate, or even a weeknight meal, as you can see.
I'm just saying, not seen in the picture were two kids and a husband all waiting for you to finish the picture so they could eat them. Go ahead, Caroline. That's all.
And I know, and that is for real. I'm sure that they probably weren't even waiting at times. Like, don't even wait for the photo. Just go ahead and dive in.
No.
And I know so many people will be diving into honey baked ham and the tailgate food this weekend in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, because Tennessee is coming to town. So let's talk some ball. Let's talk that game. What are you most looking forward to in this matchup? And what does a win mean for either of these two teams?
Yeah, it's really a fascinating matchup. I mean, with two teams, if you look at their trajectories, right? Like in the offseason, we're thinking, well, what's Tennessee possibly going to do without Nico Iamaleava? And it made sense that Josh Heupel moved on from Nico and all the drama that happened there. But you're thinking, how is he possibly going to, get this team to be the contender that they thought they could be? I mean, they were right there at the end to beat Georgia. They're not able to do it, but this is a really talented team. They still play with that tempo offensively. Joey Aguilar, their quarterback, has been just a great story. I mean, this guy almost quit, basically did quit, and then gets another opportunity. Now he's got fresh life at Tennessee. And on the Alabama side, we had them left for dead after losing to Florida State. Now they look like one of the best teams in college football, probably the best team in the SEC. They got to take care of business. This was interesting. I was looking at our All-State playoff predictor and just the way that all that works. And what the numbers are telling you is that if Alabama's able to win this game, they will jump from somewhere in the early 80s, like an 83% chance to a 91% chance to make the college football playoff. I mean, that's how much this matters. That's a big swing of points, even though it may seem a little bit small. This one has to happen, right? They've got to take care of business at home before they head on to some more difficult games down the road. And I just think it's got the makings of an instant classic in Tuscaloosa. I can't wait.
Yeah, the cigar smoke will absolutely be billowing. It just depends on which color will be smoking those cigars. You'll be at that game. You'll be in Tuscaloosa for SEC Nation this weekend, and you work with some just blast of personalities on that game. On that show, Paul Feinbaum, Tim Tebow, Roman Harper. Walk me through, give us a peek behind the curtain of what some of those production meetings look like.
Yeah, it's a blast. That's a good way to put it. I mean, they're so much fun. I'm always so thankful just to be able to spend time with them and to call them friends. I mean, let's start with Tebow. He's like everything that you think he is, but better. One of the most amazing people I've ever met, and somehow finds a way, just with all he has going on, to still be so committed to us and to want to make the show great. Like, he's very competitive, so he wants the show to be amazing. He wants to be entertaining at all times and have really good football takes. And Jordan Rogers is like this football savant with the XOs, and it's just fascinating to watch how his brain works. He's also calling a game on Saturday night, so he brings such unique insight and also a lot of humor. Like, those two together are so funny. Roman Harper is a vibe, like, at all times. He has this scooter that we travel around with us. And he just scoots around campus wherever we are. So he's going to be on one because he's going to be going back to Tuscaloosa, where, of course, he went to school this week he's going back there. So that's always an adventure for all of us when Rome is back home. But it's just hilarious. Like, he'll come back, from scootering around, and he'll just have all of these great stories about people that he met or things that he saw. And then, of course, there's Paul Feinbaum, who, is just bebopping around. Half the time we're like, where is Paul? We can't find him. And he's so small that he's hard to find. So that's always, an adventure for everybody too. Like, somebody got eyes on Paul. But no, they're the absolute best. It really is like a family. And I just look forward to my Saturdays with them so much.
The first time I ever met Paul, I was at SEC Network my first day, and there was no space in the green room to change before the show. I had to film for ESPNU. So I'm in the bathroom, and all the stalls are taken. So I've just literally dropped my pants. I got to put a suit on. Just as I drop my pants, Paul walks in, and he just looks at me and says, okay. I'm like, hey, I'm Jason. That's how I met Paul Feinbaum. So pants down meeting with Paul.
Ask him about that, Jason. I'm going to see if he remembers that.
Yeah, it was a
How could you forget?
I'll never forget. All right, so speaking of never forget, you can't say Florida here for obvious reasons. What's your favorite SEC campus to get to visit with Nation?
Ooh, I'm going to say Baton Rouge. I love going there. I mean, LSU is just like, the tailgating is on a different level because it's such different food than what you would get, at just your regular tailgates. There's definitely the Cajun feel to it. there are some things I've eaten at those tailgates that I'm not really sure what they were, but they tasted great. And they're just always down for whatever, right? Like they start early, they finish late. It is always a party there. And I just enjoy that place, that culture. It just feels like college football there, but yet its own unique brand of it. So I love going to Baton Rouge anytime we get a chance.
Don't ask what's in it. Just enjoy.
Yeah.
Just enjoy
Just
it.
take a
Just grab
bite.
a cocktail. Just take a bite. Close your eyes. It's going to taste amazing. Just don't ask
Exactly.
any questions that you don't want the answer to. And Fitz mentioned you can't say Florida. You are a Gator. You're a Florida grad. And I know it's never fun to talk about coaches potentially losing their jobs, but Billy Napier has been in the conversation of being in the hot seat over the last couple of years. They have a pretty critical matchup against Mississippi State coming up this weekend. Let's say Florida does decide to move on from Billy Napier. Who would be your dream coach for the Florida Gators? Who do you think would be the perfect fit for this team right now?
That's an interesting question. I don't know if you guys saw that. They turned the lights out on me like in the middle of while you were asking that question. So I don't know if it was like some omen that had to do with Florida.
The ghost of Billy.
I'm superstitious. Yeah, the ghost of Billy Napier is in here. I guess he's not dead yet. But no, listen, like I think there are some great candidates out there. I would say somebody like, a dream candidate would be like a Marcus Freeman. I think Clark Lee would be great coming from Vandy, like what he's done there. People are going to get mad at me because they don't want like their coach to leave, their school. But Lane Kiffin, he always kind of like toys with it, but then he's never actually gone. I think Ole Miss has been so good for him. He's been so good to Ole Miss. But yeah, those three, I think, would make me feel really good about the direction that Florida's going. But if they do decide to move on, it's going to be really interesting how this all goes and the timing of it and everything. I don't see any other like super big name jobs being open necessarily outside of Penn State. That's the other one, obviously. But in the SEC or, maybe beyond, I feel like Arkansas is probably going to keep Bobby Petrino. We'll see how he does. This week he's got a big opportunity against Texas A&M. But it seems like this could be one of the centerpiece focal point job openings if it does become open. So, yeah, I think that actually maybe opens up a little more opportunity for who they could possibly land on.
All right, Laura, let's melt your two worlds together because obviously we also watch you every day on NFL Live, a great show with another family that you absolutely love. So taking your college football and NFL acumen together, which was the worst take? At the beginning of the year when everybody wanted to leave Alabama for dead, or at the beginning of the year when everybody wanted to leave the Kansas City Chiefs for dead?
Ooh, I'm going to say the Kansas City Chiefs for dead take because there is just too much proof that they will not be left for dead. And it was just not a good idea to do that. Now, listen, are they going to be a team that is going to win the AFC championship and go back to the Super Bowl? I don't know. That could be a stretch, just depending on how some other teams end up faring. But what I will say is, so far, the Ravens don't seem like much of a threat. The Bills don't seem like much of a threat. So it would have to come from somewhere else. Golly, it might come from the AFC South at this rate. The way that some of these teams are playing, the Colts have looked really good. But it just feels like, once again, they're going to put it all together. They get Rashee Rice back this week. They have figured out a way no matter what. So, yes, that was a poor take that the dynasty is over and the Kansas City Chiefs are not going to be what they once were. I think they are remarkable in the way that they do find some sort of semblance of success, even when they've struggled at their worst. They find a way to get things done. And yet there's still, I believe, a lot more that this team can give. We have not seen the best of them by any stretch of the imagination, even when they've gotten back on track at times this season. So we may be, though, heading into that stretch as they do get an explosive threat back in Rashee Rice.
You're on SEC Nation, you're on NFL Live, you're on the sidelines on Monday Night Football. One thing that I know I admire so much about you and so many people who follow you and in sports media appreciate about you is that you can truly do it all and you make it look easy. So I'll give you an opportunity to brag on yourself and maybe some of the more unglamorous things that happen behind the scenes to make your job and your life seem so seamless from the outside looking in.
Oh goodness. Well, that's a very nice compliment. Thank you. I feel like I am sort of like dying on the vine at all times, and like I don't half the time I'm like, what am I doing? Where am I? I think probably what a lot of people don't maybe realize. A lot of times people are like, oh, you must have a private plane, or you must like. No, you will see me on your Southwest flight, or whatever flight happens to get me from point A to point B. The other day, I was trying so hard to get home on a Sunday because a lot of times I don't have a chance to pass back through home when I'm going from the college site to the NFL site. And I was able to get home, but I went from Columbia, Missouri, drove to St. Louis, then St. Louis to Boston on a flight like that landed in Boston at like 9:45, and then drove from Boston to Connecticut so I could get home like around midnight so I could be there to surprise the kids in the morning on Sunday, and then was there for like 5 hours before I had to leave again. And I say all this to like not feel sorry for myself in any stretch of the imagination. I'm so lucky to get to do this, and this is like beyond my wildest dreams. But I do think that, there's a lot more probably grind to it than people realize. And it gives me so much respect for people who are doing way harder jobs and have way harder schedules and difficulties, with everything. So I'm really thankful for it. But yeah, I'm tired most of the time, and I'm just kind of plugging along, trying to, find as much time as I possibly can with my family during this crazy time of year. And I'm just always trying to remind myself, like, I can't believe I get to do this. It is really such a privilege.
Before we get you out of here real quick, Laura, in honor of honey baked ham, all right, who's the biggest ham you work with? You got a lot of them, so who's the biggest ham?
I like that. The biggest ham is Marcus Spears. He puts on such a show, you guys. Like, he is so funny. That personality, that laugh, he is one of the funniest people. He gets going on things, and you cannot help but laugh. I mean, you just have to go right along with it. Even if you didn't think it was funny, you end up thinking it's funny by the time he's finished with you. So he's the best. He is one of my favorite people. Oh yeah, there he is. See him. Look at that stance. Like, what is he doing? I don't even know. And Dan's trying to be cool, but Dan can't be cool like Marcus can. But no, we have so much fun together, and those guys just keep me laughing. We have so many jokes. And Marcus is really special to me because, I mean, we go back all the way to 2014, 2015 when the SEC network first launched, and we started out there together. And so to watch his career grow and to be able to, get to be on national TV with him daily is just such a cool thing for us. We really celebrate it all the time, and we often laugh about how far we've come together. So really, really thankful for him, and he is definitely the ham of the group.
One of the best in the business, as are you, my friend. We appreciate your time. Congratulations on the continued success. We'll just watch you on basically every network. So thanks for hanging out with us this morning.
Thanks. I appreciate y'all.
Thanks so much, Laura.
All right, let's take a look at a big weekend coming up. Rookies who need to shine for their teams to have a shot. We'll tell you about it next on Yahoo Sports Daily.
It's very important for me to be patient. You know, they just gotta let the game come to me. You know, coach is trying to dial up a couple things for me, and I just gotta continue to just work and just having the guys trust me because I'm doing my job every time. So I just gotta continue to do my job.
That's Travis Hunter talking about being patient as he makes the best impact he possibly can. A lesson fans could afford to listen to, too. Like, we're 6 weeks in and everybody wants immediate results. But we got a big weekend coming for rookies, so let's take a look at some of them. We'll start with Travis Hunter. Does Travis Hunter have to be bigger on the offensive or defensive side of the field, in your mind, Caroline Fenton, this weekend for the Jags to get a win against the Rams?
I think he has to be bigger on the defensive side of the ball. And I think that is based on, or at least I have based that on, how the Jags have gotten to this point, how the Jags have surprised all of us to be in this position. And that is by leading the league in turnovers, not just turning other teams over, but capitalizing on those turnovers. So if the Jags want to win over the Rams this weekend, I don't think that Trevor Lawrence and this Jags offense can go toe-to-toe and pound for pound with this Rams offense. Now, we'll see what this Rams offense looks like without Puka Nacua, but assuming that the Rams offense is able to still hum at a high enough level and that Davante Adams can step in and be enough to kind of fill in Puka Nacua's shoes, this Jags offense is not going to be able to go pound for pound, toe for toe, like we saw Joe Flacco and Aaron Rodgers do last night. So the Jags are going to have to force turnovers. Travis Hunter is going to have to be a part of that and contributing to those forced turnovers, whether it's interceptions he's getting, fumbles he's forcing, or being part of disruption defensively. He's going to have to be a big part of what the Jags want to do defensively, because that's how they've been winning football games, forcing turnovers and some kind of silliness defensively so far.
Yeah, and that's why I actually take the opposite side of this. Their defense has been figuring it out every week. Now, it's a tougher task to figure it out against the Rams, even without Puka Nacua. The hard part for me is that while we've talked a lot about the success of the Jags, and I think that's an important couch here, like they are very successful, their offense is successful despite the inability to really get the passing game going at all. BTJ has just been a different wide receiver so far this year, and Travis Hunter feels like at times he's just been invisible. So whatever they need to do, like this is a little bit short-term, a little bit long-term. I think their defense is something I trust. Even without a lot from Travis Hunter, they'll be able to impact plays because they've done it over and over and over again. What I don't know if I can trust is, can this offense reliably continue to win if the passing game doesn't get going? So as Pro Football Talk points out, he's not making the kind of impact on either side of the ball that would justify the investment. I would say we need to be really patient with these hot takes, especially on Travis Hunter. He's learning two positions on two sides of the ball in one season. This was part of what we had to caution ourselves. But to me, just getting 3 or 4 plays dialed in where, hey, we're going to get quick balls out to him. We're going to let him become impactful. They control that better on the offensive side of the ball, and I think it can make a better impact. What about my guy, Ashton Jeanty? Look, Ashton Jeanty has played well so far at times this weekend. The Raiders have not played well around him. But you want to talk about somebody that absolutely has to be lights out. The Raiders play at Arrowhead against the Chiefs. Caroline, this is going to sound like it's hyperbole. I think that the Raiders have the chance. Ashton Jeanty has the chance to save the entire Raiders season if he goes off in this game. Everything has been a little bit off for this team. It has not looked quite right for this team, but let's get this straight here. If they win this game at Arrowhead, they go to 3-4 going into a bye. You feel so much better about the rest of your season at 3-4 than you do at 2-5. And the only way they're going to get there, to me, is if Ashton Jeanty isn't just good, he's great. He's huge. I came into the season saying he had to have a Christian McCaffrey-like impact. I think he has to have a Christian McCaffrey prime impact, peak performance game for the Raiders to have any shot to win at Arrowhead. And even then, I'm not sure they can. He's got to be absolutely electric and out of his mind in this weekend's game.
Well, that's what he was drafted to be, was to be a Christian McCaffrey type of impact for this team. You don't draft a running back that high, much less in the first round at all, if you don't think that that guy can have a Christian McCaffrey-like impact, like Jahmyr Gibbs has been for the Detroit Lions, also a first-round pick just a few years ago. So yeah, I'm with you. If Ashton Jeanty has the type of day that I think we expected Ashton Jeanty to have at times consistently this season, and that's over 100 rushing yards, finding the end zone, popping off with some of those big-time runs that we saw from him at the college level, That could be enough to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. And to your point, you beat the Kansas City Chiefs. Does that completely change your season? I don't know, but it makes you feel so different about this team. A divisional win, like you said, going into the bye, because 3-4 feels drastically different than 2-5. You're 2-5 at this point in the season. It does kind of feel like the season is lost. And not only does it change things in the standings and on the scoreboard and the win and loss column, it also changes the way that you feel like this Raiders team can continue to piece wins together. It just depends, though, on what Chiefs offense we're going to get, what Chiefs team we're going to get. We're going to see Rashee Rice this weekend. Of course, Xavier Worthy, and inserting those two back into this Chiefs offense gave us optimism all season long for the level of explosiveness that this Chiefs offense can have, even if we didn't see it at times. But Xavier Worthy was out there on the field when the Chiefs lost to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And that was a Chiefs offense that was lacking explosiveness drastically. If the Chiefs offense looks how it looked against the Ravens, albeit against a bad defense, but still as explosive as it looked against the Ravens, against the Lions last week, then I don't think any amount of Ashton Jeanty running the football is going to be able to save the Raiders. Because at that point, you're digging yourself in just far too much of a hole to be able to run the ball consistently. But if we see the Chiefs offense sputter, if Rashee Rice has some rust that he's going to have to shake off in his first game coming back from suspension, and you can continue to run the football, you can continue to utilize play action, then yes, that's absolutely the path for the Raiders. It just depends on which Chiefs team we're going to get this weekend.
Best way to control that offense is to not let him get on the field. Long drives, Ashton Jeanty. All right, what about Cam Ward? We've talked a lot about Cam Ward. What do we have to see from Cam Ward for the Titans to have any shot against the Patriots?
Yeah, like we talked about Arthur earlier in the show, who does a great job of covering the AFC South, and he talked about how much drive this Titans team is going to have, how much investment they put into this matchup of not getting embarrassed against Mike Vrabel. If there's one thing I know about Mike Vrabel, he has a tendency to win games that he has no business winning, and a tendency to lose games that he has no business losing. We called it affectionately when I was doing sports talk radio in Nashville, Fitz, you know it well, the Vrabel special. Win game you're not supposed to, turn around and lose a game you're not supposed to. The New England Patriots won a game they were not supposed to win against the Buffalo Bills. So what's the other side of that Vrabel special? Losing games they're not supposed to lose. So it's going to have to take, for Cam Ward to will the Titans to victory, it's going to take some uncharacteristic mistakes from the New England Patriots, whether it's dumb penalties that we saw early in the season or bad turnovers that we saw early in the season. But at the end of the day, Cam Ward's going to have to go toe-to-toe with Drake May. I don't know if Cam Ward is capable of that, to be completely honest with you. He has one game where he's thrown for at least 250 passing yards. He hasn't thrown for multiple touchdowns in a single game so far this season. So in order for Cam Ward to will the Titans to victory, he's going to have to do something that he has not done yet this year. Throw for multiple touchdowns and throw for 250 plus. That's what it's going to have to take to go toe-to-toe with Drake May.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's such a tall task. But I will say this, at some point, it'll be interesting to see because, again, interim coach Mike McCoy has been very clear that he will not say anything about how they intend to use Cam Ward this weekend. They are going to try and unlock new things. So the question is, does that give them a little bit of an advantage? Are they able to find new creative ways? Now, at the end of the day, you can give somebody new the Rubik's Cube, and it doesn't mean that it's going to be put together better, right? At some point, we have to acknowledge the talent or the lack thereof that is around Cam at key positions, and we have to acknowledge the fact that if you just look on paper, flat out, the Patriots are a better football team. So Cam Ward is going to have to play above his skis right now, and with all of that being said, the Titans defense is going to have to find a way to get Drake May to make some mistakes, which so far hasn't really been the MO. It's a tall task to find, but that's part of what comes with being the number one overall pick. When you are the number one overall pick, especially now with a new head coach, you are number one overall pick with heavy expectations. You got to come out, show you can be that guy that can help your team win games that nobody else thinks they should. All of these games you taught me, the Patriots favored by 7, the Chiefs favored by 12. I will acknowledge that all of these look like big, tall tasks, but when your rookie's taken with this much star power, that's why we expect greatness from them so quickly. All right. We got to get to our picks as we do every single Friday. We'll go up and down some of the biggest games across the college and NFL landscape, and we'll figure out who's going to win. We'll do it next on Yahoo Sports Daily. Welcome back to Yahoo Sports Daily. Caroline Fenton, Jason Fitz. It's Friday, and you know what that means? It means that we've got picks to make all across the board. You know what we like to do. We give you a pick six. We go through 6 games. It's our predictions, and we figure out how we're doing. So far, it's coming down to the wire. We are very close in this contest so far this season, Caroline. So let's take a look at some games here and see how we can do. We'll pull up the list. By the way, 16-4. We're both 16-14. I started off hot. Things went to hell in a handbasket. I feel like I'm starting to come back again. I don't know. Let's go through these games. We'll pick all 6 of them, and then we will talk copious amounts of trash if either of us can ever get a sizable lead. Georgia, Ole Miss. What do you got in this? Oh, yeah, 100%. What do you got in this one?
I'm taking Georgia. I mean, like, it is not an easy place to play. I am taking Georgia because I just do not think that Kirby Smart's going to fall to 2 losses before we even get to Halloween. Georgia is too sound. Georgia constantly finds ways to win. Georgia is too tough on the lines of scrimmage. I think it's just going to be too much for this Ole Miss team to overcome.
I'm a little disappointed you didn't sing Georgia. That's what I wanted there, but I'm not going to do that because I'm picking Ole Miss. Look, I don't care about Georgia 2 losses. Come on. Georgia's done nothing but disappoint me already once this season. I'm not buying it again. The better football team here, if we were playing the video game version of it, might be Ole Miss. I'm just saying. So I like Ole Miss to get some big explosives out of this. That's going to be the difference in the game. And what I think is going to truly be one of those games where one team's up by 10, then the other team's up by 10. And we're sitting here in the fourth quarter saying, what in the hell did we just watch? Rams, Jags. This is a London game. Again, I cannot congratulate you enough, London. You have suffered through years of terrible Jags football. Now you get one of the best games. Suddenly you're like, oh, this is what football is supposed to look like. I had no idea. What do you got, Caroline?
Oh, it just feels like, Jags are kind of in their second home. Rams don't have Puka Nacua. It all feels like there's a Jags win brewing, but there's just something in my gut, deep down in my soul, that is telling me that the Rams are going to win this football game. The Rams just have, too much to overcome, whether it's defensively or the weapons that Matthew Stafford has. Matthew Stafford himself. If you tell me that I can choose Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay or Trevor Lawrence and Liam Cohen, I'm going to take Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay. No disrespect to the Jags brass, but I'll take Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay every single day, and I will roll with them. I will take the Rams.
The Jags are winning games by living off of absolute dominant defense that turns the ball over. I don't believe that the Rams are going to make the key mistakes that will lose them the football game. That's the biggest difference in here is that the way the Jags beat you is they force you to make errors. I trust the coach-quarterback combo with Davante Adams getting a much bigger workload. I think the Rams win this football game. We agree on this one. It's a tight one. I could have gone either way on it, but I will go Rams on it. I think this becomes a really good early morning game that gets us amped for the rest of the day. Let's go back to the college football landscape. The third Saturday in October. We know what that means. That means Tennessee, Bama. What do we got in this one, Caroline?
I picked Arkansas to beat Tennessee last week, and I thought I was going to get disowned from my family. My dad texted me and said, don't talk to me. Of course, I come from a Tennessee family, so I'm going to double down on that. Dad, I'm sorry if you're watching. My parents will be there, and I hope that they have the best time, but I don't think that they're going to come away very happy from the result of this one. I will take Alabama to beat Tennessee. Ty Simpson is rolling. Alabama's pass offense has been lethal, and Tennessee has the worst pass defense in the Southeastern Conference. Now, Tennessee can get after the quarterback, but I think Ty Simpson's going to be able to get the ball out quick. Those receivers are going to get some separation. Bryant Denny is going to be rocking and rolling, and it will be the Tide who are lighting up cigars after this one.
Yeah, one of my best friends ever toured with Jason Tharp, a massive Tennessee Vols fan, had the checkerboard on his calf. Unfortunately, he passed a few years ago, but he was a very tall individual. And when I would walk off the bus, he would always put his hand straight up in the air, and I would have to jump as high as I could to try and high-five him, and I would scream, "Go Vols!" He would not raise his hand for me this weekend. I'm sorry, Tharp. I love you, but no, this one's going Alabama. And look, I want to believe. I want to believe so badly. But the fact is, I have let my mind go into the landscape of, like, Bama's going to figure out a way to blow it over the course of the last few weeks. That isn't who this Bama team has been so far. I think I've been pretty hard on Kalen DeBoer and Bama fans, frankly, for just accepting, hey, this is just a different football team right now. I don't know. I just think that there's a difference right now in Bama's ability, Ty Simpson's ability to handle the moment. Tennessee's got everything they need to win this football game. It's at Bama, and I trust Bama to win. Commanders at Cowboys. Oh, go ahead, Caroline. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say we think that Alabama is gonna find a way to blow it. Tennessee has narrowly avoided blowing it the past 2 weeks in games.
100%.
A one-score game against Mississippi State, a field goal difference against Arkansas at home last week. Those are two teams that Tennessee should be blowing out, and they just haven't. They haven't been able to find that separation.
Well, I apologize to your dad also. Hopefully, I'm still invited for Thanksgiving. Commanders
Of
at
course,
Cowboys. I
always.
just invited
Open
myself
invite.
for Thanksgiving. Commanders
Always.
at Cowboys. What do we got in this one?
I'm taking the Commanders. I'm rocking with the Commanders. It was such a brutal loss against the Chicago Bears on national television, and it was just the difference of a field goal and some dumb, sloppy mistakes in the rain that the Commanders have made. I don't think that the Commanders are that kind of team. I still believe in the Commanders' ability to be a playoff team. I don't think they're a Super Bowl caliber team, but I think they're a playoff team. And I think that Jaden Daniels is going to be able to take advantage of this leaky Cowboys defense. I think Jaden Daniels runs for maybe over 100 in this one, so I'm going to take the Commanders to win.
Yeah, I just don't think the Commanders have the magic this year, obviously, that they had last year. Jaden has looked good at times and a little weird at times. The Commanders have felt disjointed. CD coming back. I'm going Cowboys. I think the Cowboys win this football game. And by the way, I think we're having a much different conversation next week about the Cowboys and their playoff chances, even with that abject disaster of a defense. Sorry, we
Truly
gotta do
is a
this.
disaster.
It's a big game. Yeah,
I know.
I know. LSU.
Get it
Vandy,
over with.
Yeah, I know. I already told you I'm picking Vandy. Anchor down. I can't. Is it a VU? I don't know how they do that. Anchor down. Vanderbilt's winning this football.
Yeah.
But that's not really a U. It's like, I mean, it would have to curve up. I don't know. It's go.
I won't nitpick it.
Trust me, they do it. Vandy fans do it. Go ahead. What do you got in this one?
So, look, I always say I'm realistic about my team, but I'm still a fan. I'm taking LSU to win this one. I really, truly cannot remember a game where I felt like LSU has been counted out more, where there's been more bulletin board material against LSU. I heard a Vanderbilt player talking about how they're looking for a shutout in this one. This will be a really big test for Brian Kelly of how he can use this bulletin board to fire up his team, how he can use all of the disrespect that it feels like is coming LSU's way, the fact that they're underdogs in this one, the fact that all of the money or a majority of the money is coming in on Vanderbilt. How is Brian Kelly able to use that to fuel his team? Overall, I believe in this defense. I don't believe in LSU's offense. Let me just say that for the record, but I believe in LSU's defense. I believe in Blake Baker. I believe that this is an elite championship caliber defense. And although it will not be pretty, although I will be sitting on the couch with my head in my hands a majority of this game, I think LSU's defense is going to be able to find a way.
You are right. By the way, Vandy is definitely doing the hot girl summer, like 10 Things I Hate About You. They've been the nerdy girl forever. Now they're coming and swaggy walking through the halls.
Look at me now. I got a makeover.
Yeah. You're not wrong. Falcons at 49ers. This is a big matchup in the NFC. What do you got?
The Falcons looked, incredible on Monday Night Football, but it's a short week, right? The Niners are incredibly banged up, but the Niners have found a way to win some of these games. So I think the Falcons have a little bit of a hangover. I think they're still riding the high of that massive Bills win. I think the Niners are able to be scrappy like they have been for the better part of the last few weeks. And despite injury, they're able to find a way to win this one at home.
I think the most under-talked about story in the entire NFL this season might be the defense of the Atlanta Falcons. It is not good. It is spectacular. It is elite. It is at there's a difference between going to Chili's, which I love, versus going to a Michelin star restaurant, which is what the Falcons defense is. The Falcons defense wills them to a win. And you know what, Caroline? I don't even think this game's going to be close. I think Michael Penix Jr. is starting to unlock some things.
Spicy.
I think this offense for the Falcons is rolling. I think Harry Douglas is going to be walking around going, all day long. The Falcons. I still can't do it. I still can't do it. It's getting better. But Falcons win. Falcons win big.
I look, what we saw from Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Michael Penix Jr., and that defense, like all of those things, if you just take away name and logo, those are Super Bowl. Like, that's a formula for a Super Bowl. A quarterback that you trust with two legitimate playmakers offensively, a stifling defense, like checks all of those boxes. Before I can buy into it completely, though, I need to see it consistently week over week. I need to see the Falcons continue to show up.
I'm not sure in a week we won't be saying Seattle and Atlanta are the two best teams in the NFC. Find out. Come back, hang out with us. Yahoo Sports Daily, Caroline Fenton, Jason Fitz. Have a great weekend. Thanks for watching.